as I get into it, I just wanted to give a bit of an introduction to me and to Spread. If you've not met me before, my name's Gareth, and I've been involved in the sort of creative fields for most of my life. I'm in my mid-50s, and I started out going to art school and then spent 15 years in commercial interior design, working, solving workplace problems for companies like Sony, Cisco Systems, Reebok, working across Europe oftentimes and sometimes into the States. And then I kind of really sort of followed a bit of a passion project and spent nearly 10 years working in the third sector, in the charity sector, working for an organisation that organised volunteers going into prisons. And that was an amazing thing. I'm running that charity for a short time towards the end of my tenure there, bringing a lot of those creative skills into how do we talk about what we do, how do we communicate with the people we're working with, how do we take some of those things from the commercial sector into the third sector, before deciding actually I wanted to be back into the creative field and coming out of that and freelancing for a while, and then setting up Spread Creative as a design agency, brand design agency, a number of years ago, and seen that grow, steadily over the last few years, and surviving the dreaded pandemic, and so really taking this time, post sort of pseudo post pandemic, you know what I mean, to really reinvest and reconnect with our audience, and that's why we're here today, and this webinar sort of comes off, it's the second in what will be a series, I think, of about 10 webinars over the course of the next year. And it comes off the back of the first one, which is to take something that's become a bit of a cliche in the design world, the brand world, is that it's kind of communicating your why, understanding not just what you do and how you do it, but why you do it, and figuring out why that's important as an organisation, and particularly in the way in which they communicate that to the outside world, looking at brands like Apple and Nike and others who talk more about their why than the actual product itself. But what we were looking at, particularly last time round, is as we're developing those external messages of why and connecting with an audience in that way, it's important that you do so with a sense of integrity, that your external message is matched by your internal one, that you're not just telling people that you're passionate about the environment, but that you demonstrate it internally. You don't just talk about working with your customers because you value them, because you value people, you value, say, family values, and then not treat your employees very well. That if you're going to communicate your why, you need to make sure that it's genuine, it's true, and it's represented throughout your company. And if you're a purpose-driven business, or becoming a purpose-driven business, or becoming a net positive business, that messaging, in a sense, starts internally with your own people before you then go out and tell people externally. And so coming on to today, a bit of a story from that really is about kind of figuring out one's own values. And it takes me back a number of years now, probably 5 or 6 years, to an exhibition that I went to in a gallery in London. It was actually a photography studio. I was kind of really passionate about photography, and I've done a lot of work in sort of fashion and some bits of glamour, and in photojournalism. Tissues on this has travelled with me with one of our clients doing photojournalism in post-conflict zones. And so one of my kind of heroes of photography would be a guy called Nick Knight, who you may not have heard of, but he is one of the preeminent photographers in the fashion industry worldwide. He's about 10 years older than me, and his Rolodex is full of, he's got Kate Moss on speed dial, all the supermodels. He shoots for Vogue. He's got images that are in the permanent collection at the National Portrait Gallery. I mean, he's known globally within the industry as being one of the most creative, one of the most sought after, and one of the most extraordinary photographers. And he was putting on an exhibition at his studio in Pimlico, where is he based? Yeah, just of Belgravia. And it was a series of images that he'd asked great fashion illustrators to create from something like 20 years of Kate Moss's iconic career. So he took sort of 20, 30 moments that were kind of standout moments for that career, and then asked illustrators to take their kind of fashion illustration and create an image for it. And then he put that up as an exhibition in his space. So I went along to see that exhibition, and I got talking to the curator of it, who was one of the women who worked with as part of Nick's team. And she said, would you like to see the photography studio? And I was like, would I? Absolutely. So she took me into the main studio space, and I was kind of pinching myself. I'm here in Nick Knight's studio, And then from a room walks in Nick Knight. And I was just utterly sort of gobsmacked, really. And he came over and introduced himself. We shook hands and we got to talking. And of course, I could have spent, an hour with the guy, but I had about 10, 15 minutes. But one of the questions I asked him triggered, and his answer particularly, has triggered a huge shift in the way in which I've gone about creating Spread Creative and the way in which we work with clients. And I remember asking him, saying, look, you're the great Nick Knight, right? So when clients come to you, do they kind of give you carte blanche to just create whatever it is because you're Nick Knight, right? Why would you give a brief to Nick Knight? Surely you'd say to him, you do what you do best, Do they give you carte blanche to create whatever you want for their campaigns? And the answer he gave me, I was not expecting. He just looked straight at me and said, I wouldn't work with them if they did. He said, what would be the point? I would just create something for them of any quality and then just charge them a big fee. So what would be the point in that? Where's the satisfaction for me in that? He said, the thing that we do is that we probably only work with about a quarter of the people who come to us. And we choose who we work with based on our values. So I'm looking for people who are fully invested. This is what he's telling me. I'm looking for people who are fully invested in what they're doing. That they wrestle with it, that it means something to them, that it's not just another campaign, but it's something important, something that's meaningful for them and for their customers. That they have wrestled with it, and they've got a problem that they can't overcome. And they know it's to do with a campaign, and so they start looking around for the people that they know would potentially be able to help them solve that problem. And they've chosen to come to me because of the work that I've done. They've seen the work that I've done before. They've seen the way that we work as a team. And they come to me and they say, this is who we are. This is the problem we've got. This is what we're trying to achieve. Will you work with us? And he said, it's at that point that we say, that's something that I can get me and my team invested in because they're invested. And I was just utterly gobsmacked, I think, by that this idea that Nick Knight, I think he had about a team of about 10 people working at Show Studio in Belgravia, not a big team, but his business could have been 4 times bigger than it was if he just took every client that came and spoke to him. He could be 4 times wealthier. He could employ 4 times the number of people, whatever it is. He could have a much bigger business. He could quadruple his income, his turnover, just by accepting the work that came to him. But he chose not to. And you know what? I came away from that, and it struck a chord with me so deeply that I decided that day that, in a way, some of it was I'd already got some of that, but it really helped me come away from that saying, you know what? We're going to do the same. We only want to work with clients, and we wanted whose values align with us, that we wanted our goals to be in line with our values. And I did a bit of work, I think I might have mentioned this last time out, but I did a bit of work with a business coach over lockdown. And one of the things we talked about was Spread Creative's business goals. And we quickly realized that actually the business goals we have here are not financial. I know that a lot of businesses have goals for certain turnover at certain points in their future, a year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, or to cash out by selling the company or whatever. But when Cornelia started to talk to me about the goals for the company, for me it was much more about, well, I want to have a team of however many people. I want to give opportunities to younger people or to other creatives in the industry to have the kind of job that they pinch themselves every day that they get to do. That we are inspired by a poster, you can't see it behind me now, but it says work hard and be nice to people. There's a poster by an artist called Anthony Burrell. And it's like this idea of doing great business with great people and loving that and coming up with some of the most creative work we can. And having an amazingly excited, invested team around me to do that, and then realizing that if we were able to do that, then the financials would follow. But the financials are not the goal. And so we wanted to try and be kind of intentional about that. How do you do that? So we decided that we only wanted to work with hell yes clients, which is a great kind of phrase. Sounds exciting, but what does that look like? So we came up with a checklist. Yes, we have a checklist. And so whenever we get an inquiry that comes into Spread Creative, we run through this checklist, and there's 12 kind of points on it, 12 questions that help us kind of unravel the DNA and the nature of the client. So a bit like Nick Knight, we wanted to have a robust, standardized way that we can very quickly determine whether this was a client we wanted to work with. It's clear from what Nick told me that he values his time himself, he values his people, and he values the work. And I want to do the same. So I'm going to take you through these 12 points to determine a hell yes client, or sometimes more importantly, to determine as quickly as possible the hell no clients, which in many ways is kind of more valuable to know. So these aren't necessarily in the perfect order. Another thing to say about these 12 points is that they don't necessarily represent a whole piece, that you can have, they won't tick all of these boxes, but somewhere in the process of going through this checklist, you discover the sort of the essential DNA of the people you're talking to. And so some people may not tick all these boxes, but you'd still choose to work with them. I guess some people would tick all these boxes and you still wouldn't. So it's kind of... Anyway, we'll get into it. So the first one, and again, these aren't in particular preference of order, and they don't always come out, in a linear process, 1 through 12. But we love working with people who are decision makers. Preferably if they've got skin in the game. People who've got their own money in the business, who are, MDs, CEOs, or people who are shareholders in the company, or people that you realise pretty quickly are so sold out for their company that they work for that they carry the essential, that if you cut them open, they would, see the name of the company in rings. So you get that sense that there's a sense of ownership that the person that we're dealing with has in the company, and with few exceptions, I want to be talking to the decision maker. And we worked with a client for many years actually, and I've learned this lesson kind of the hard way from that, because over the course of a number of years we were working with successive kind of marketing managers who A, didn't have skin in the game, and B, weren't the decision makers, and it was kind of soul destroying ultimately, that we would create these extraordinary design pieces, and they would say, well, first, this will come on to the second point, is that we like them to be kind of entrepreneurial. We like them to be kind of risk takers. We like them to have a little bit of, a little bit of moxie about them, as the Americans would say. And dealing with people who are not decision makers and who become filters for what you say as it goes through to the decision maker. So oftentimes I would say, this is what we're pitching, and then the person we would be dealing with would say, okay, let me put that to the MD. And of course, you're not then in control of how they communicate it to the MD. They're not the carriers of the vision, so they're already filtering out. And then to come back and say, well, we're not really sure. So, at the time we needed the client, I'll be honest, and we did some great work together as well. I mean, it's not that it was all bad, but the process was really difficult, of feeling like we were giving everything of our best and then going through this kind of filter before it even got to the decision maker. And the decision maker themselves may well have been much more kind of courageous, much more, entrepreneurial, and may well have gone with some of our earlier ideas, but we didn't get to pitch to them. So nowadays, if we want to find out early, are we working with a decision maker? Does this person have skin in the game? If not, let's talk to them instead. Let's go beyond that. Let's talk to the people. And also, excuse me, why aren't we talking to that person? Is it because they don't value the work as much? That they're happy to do this significant work and run it through one of their teams. But we'll come on to that. We like them to be entrepreneurial. That's the second point. We like them to have that kind of spirit about them that's risk taking, that's courageous. One of our key phrases when we're talking to the clients when they pitch ideas to us is to say, well, we could do it like that, but what if we did it like this? And we love those kind of moments where we have ideas that take the client way beyond what they thought they were asking for. And you need to be working with those kind of entrepreneurial, skin in the game kind of people for them to be able to go, you know what, scrap what we thought we wanted, let's go for that instead. We like, a third point would we like to have people with really aligned values. We've spoken to we've just taken on a new client who's a recruitment company, and recruitment companies historically have got quite bad reputation oftentimes of being a sales environment, sell, very quick money making machinery, and get through staff turnover quite quickly. And so when we were approached by this recruitment company, we were a little bit skeptical to begin with, but as they started to talk to us, as we met with them, it was clear that suddenly our values aligned. One of their values is that if they employ someone, they will do everything they can to make that employee achieve whatever they need to in the business. And one of the people that we're working with as part of that process now was someone that was brought in to do sales and struggled with sales. So instead of just letting them go, they said, okay, let's move you into a different department. They moved them into admin and compliance. And they've been doing well at that. But there's a spark about this person that they're not really getting to express. So the company have now said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we get them to work on this design project with us, because we're designing a whole new brand identity for them. And let's move them into marketing, because there's something about, they've got something in this character. And so actually that person's going to be embedded with us in our team for a day a week to really grasp the whole thing. And then I asked the MD of this company, I said, what's been your biggest achievement to date? Expecting them to come back and say, well, we've increased sales from 10 million to 25 million over the last however many years. But the MD, a young woman, said it was hiring someone who was really down on their luck, in a lot of debt, and was struggling to find work. And they came on board with us and just nailed it straight away. And within a year had cleared all their debt, and within 2 years had now looking to buy their own place, supporting their parents. And it got emotional for a moment, and it was like, you are my people. And we realized that even though that this company was established in an industry that's known for being quite cutthroat and very salesy and not very empathetic and not very net positive and not very purpose driven, actually for them it was like they're in the employment business, right? In recruitment. And so the values that they're going out to their client with are the same values they're expressing internally. That they're passionate about the recruitment of their own people, and so those values align all the way through their business. And so working with them is like, you know what? Yes, you are our people. We will take this client on, and we're just about to embark on a 5-month massive project to completely create for them a new visual brand identity. Logos, systems, fonts, patterns, iconography, thinking about the way they speak to their customer, a load of narrative guidelines, as well as a whole kind of social media structure as well. So carrying their brand identity through to their social media. How do they post? Where do they post? What are they saying? How are they saying it? How are they communicating the values of the company? Really exciting piece of work, and we're thrilled to be working with them. We're working with the MD, got skin in the game, very entrepreneurial, and their values align with what we do. The other thing we really like is as kind of they're a kind of a counterculture business, which I really love. But one of the questions we ask people, and this will be the fourth point, is do you know what we do? And because I want to know that people have invested, right? So, if people come back and say, well, we don't really know. And I say, well, have you been on our website? And I say, well, no. It just kind of, it just kind of tells you something, right? So when this company came in and said, oh yeah, we've looked at your website and we looked at your previous work that you've done, and we just know that you'd be the right people to work with us. It's great, love it. And I guess as an extension of that would be our fifth point, is that they know the design process. That they have a sense of how we work through our case studies and various other things. So we one of the things that we do is, and we learned, I think we've learned this along the way, but we also learned it from a story about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs worked at Apple twice. So he founded it with Steve Wozniak, and then he left the company for a period and then rejoined, and then the rest is history. But in that in that kind of intervening space, he set up a company called Next Computers, providing computers largely for education. And he wanted to make the company into a £10 million company really quickly, and he wanted to shortcut that whole process by getting his brand sorted out. So he went to one of the world's most famous brand designers at the time, a guy named Paul Rand, and he asked Paul Rand some questions. And he said, one of the things he said, will we get options with that? And Paul Rand said, no, I will solve your problem and you will pay me. And that really sort of struck me, this idea of the design. And so the design process, for one, is one of dialogue and one of taking the client with us. And that's kind of comes back to all these values, is that it's important, it means something to them, it's important, it means something to us. Let's do this together. And so we do discovery sessions where we get large teams of stakeholders. It would be, senior management team, right down through, right down to admin or even a cleaner, whatever, whoever works for that company and sees a different angle on it. We want their perspective. We'll go out to their customer, we'll talk to them. And then what will come out of those discovery sessions often is a kernel of an idea that we just know, it's an instinctive thing, we know is the right idea. And I've talked before about this isn't Strictly Come Dancing. If a client says to us, this idea that the client says, well, we want 3 options. So we go away, we do a whole bunch of work, and we come back and we present them, and then they hold up their scorecards. I was like, no, I'm sorry. In the words of Dragon's Den, I'm out. We don't chase 3 options. We don't chase 3 ideas. We do the work. We're a very thoughtful, creative agency. We think before we speak. It's part of our tagline here. Our thinking is probably our most valuable resource and most valuable part of the process. And it's in that time, in discovery and in communication with the client and taking them with us on that journey and them taking with us on their journey, that an idea comes out and instinctively go, that's it. And the client says, that's it. And so together we work to create one extraordinary piece of work that we love and they love, and it's like, that solves a problem, let's do that. And that does lead on to things like, probably the 6th one is that they value design. That we work with the client before, and we created a whole new brand identity for them. They were like, "Man, yeah, it's fine." It just wasn't part of who they were, and their company went on to succeed massively and really grow. And talking to them, and they said, "Well, I'm not really sure that the rebrand had anything to do with it." And just like, okay, but trying to. And then more recently, we've worked with an amazing client called Business Plan for Peace, and it's led by a lady called Dr. Scilla Elworthy, who's 3-time nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Extraordinary work in conflict resolution around the world. And they have just been a joy to work with us. We've created a whole new logo system for them, and it's been so meaningful. And they've really valued the design process, so that whenever we've gone to them to say, look, we need to meet, we need to get around a table, they've pulled out all the stops to make sure that the founder is there, that we're getting all the input we need, and they've given us all the resources and the very, very best of themselves to help us be the best of ourselves. And in fact, we've created a brand identity for them now. We've just redesigned their website, which is just going into development, into coding, and being built over the next month. But they've come back and said, look, you've designed a brand identity for us and a logo for us that we think is almost better than we are. So now we've got to pull ourselves up to be as good as the face that you're giving us. And have been very kind in the things that they've said about us as an agency. And it's been one of the key things that we've noticed with them all the way through. They've valued the design. So what we've got skin in the game, entrepreneurial, aligned values, know what we do, know the design process, and value that process, value design, value what a brand identity can bring them. Number 7 would be around the issue of positioning. And companies position themselves in all sorts of ways. Rolex will position themselves as being the highest quality product, high value, high quality. Lidl would position themselves, and their main part of their marketing would be around low cost, quality, but at low cost. And so you can tell a company's positioning by the things that they tell you, whether they position themselves as market leaders, as they position themselves as being highest value or lowest cost, or whatever it is. Some companies sell one product for a lot of money, other companies sell lots of products for little money. But one of the bits of positioning that we really like to work with, and this is not a yes no kind of binary issue for us. It's one of saying our preferred positioning is when, and at least if a company has a part of this, is that they are a disruptor. A lot of the campaigns and a lot of things we like to design, I like to think that we're agents provocateurs. There's so much noise out there. There's so much marketing and stuff going out there that in order to cut through that, we want to be courageous and be provocative and be sort of culture shifting. And so this idea of preferred positioning for us being disruptors, one of the best disruptive brands for a long time was Uber. The taxi cab companies and the taxi cab kind of industry has been the same since horse-drawn carriages, right? And then suddenly Uber comes along with this, technology in the app, and you don't even have to pay the driver. Everything they did was so completely different that they changed the whole kind of taxi business worldwide in one fell swoop. Incredibly disruptive business, disrupted and redefined the entire industry. Working with clients who are looking to do that, who are saying, no, we want to do something different. We're in this industry, but we want to reframe it. We want to reshape it. We don't want to be thermometers that just take the temperature of the atmosphere and replicate it. We want to be thermostats. We want to change the atmosphere. We want to change the conditions. So that's always kind of fun to work with those people. So that would be something on our list, is what's your positioning? What kind of messaging do you want to put out there? One of the questions we ask a client oftentimes, and it's often one that gets some kind of thinking, is what's your deity of choice? And what that means is, broken down more simply, would be, how are you going to make a decision about what creative partner you work with? What's your priority here? Is it shared values? Is it quality of the I've just got Siri's just interrupted me. Is it shared values? Is it the design process? Is it the investment in design? Or is it just we want the cheapest and the quickest we can get? What's the deity of choice? If a client says to us, we're going out to 5 different design companies and we're looking for the cheapest one, then for us that just demonstrates that their values are so misaligned with who we are that even if they had the budget, we would probably say we're probably not the right design company for you. If your deity of choice is we want someone who will work with us as a partner, who will come with us on a journey and be part of the success of our business with us and help us transform our business, and will invest everything they have of themselves in the process, then we're probably the right agency for you. So what is your deity of choice? How are you ultimately going to make the decision about what design company you go for? That helps us understand whether we're in the right conversation. We love it if a client's ready to start. We've got a project, it's intentional, we've put the budget aside, we're ready to go. Always helps. If they're just sort of, because otherwise we could spend a lot of time working with people only to discover that actually it's not in this year's budget, it's in next year's budget, but they're just sounding people out. So we just kind of happily park that and come back to them later. One of the things we always ask is if we do this well and we completely, if we complete this project successfully, is there more work? Is there another project to get involved in? And one of the reasons we ask that question is not just because we want, to grow the company, which of course we do, but it's like, are you looking for a longer term partner in this? Or is this just a singular piece of work, get it done, and then the next time you're going to go out and you're going to pitch it to however many companies? It's like, if we're successful in this, what more can we do? What's coming down the line? And that helps us as well, because that and I'll come back to it, it's about why do we do this? This next one's going to sound a bit kind of strange. We're looking for companies, I guess, in our hell yes sort of checklist. Where's your turnover at? And so what we've found is there's a scale. We're looking for companies ideally who would be £1 million turnover plus. The recruitment company we're working with, £25 million turnover. What it means is that obviously they're growing, they're successful, there's a lot invested, they're an established business, but also it means that they've got resources to invest. It means that they're looking for someone who can help them take the next step, and that's something we're really thrilled to be part of. And the more they can give us, the more we can do. And that's not to say that we wouldn't work with a startup. Remember I said at the beginning, people don't have to tick all 12 of these boxes for us to work with them. It's just, it helps us tease out. If we have to make a choice between, however many projects we want to work with, these things help us tease out the hell yes companies or the hell yes opportunities. Obviously, we work with startups if they can get investment. We work with charities who would have nowhere near that kind of turnover oftentimes. But it's an indication for us that they've already seen some success. They've got money to invest, and we can help them take that next step. And there seems to be a sliding scale. The more that a company invests, the less hassle it is for us typically, because they've already solved their. They don't. Companies with large turnovers don't tend to micromanage things like that. The smaller the budget, the more stressful it is for us. And woe betide we do any work for nothing, because and we do some pro bono work. We work with local charities who are aligned with the arts and things that we're passionate about. Essex Symphony Orchestra, for instance, we designed their whole logo system and all of their concert programs and posters. We love supporting them. But that comes with some caveats. One of the things is that if we're going to work for you for nothing, you've got to let us flex our design muscles a bit and trust us and let's have some fun. So they know that. But we find that the bigger the company is, the less hassle. there is. And we've got so much to do that we just don't want to get fuss in the way. The last one, number 12, would also be an interesting one, which is, does this project give us an opportunity to learn something new? Does it expand our horizons, or does it allow us the opportunity to hire someone new? We want to grow. That's our, as I said earlier on, that's our goals. Our business goals is to grow, to bring more people in. So again, if there's an opportunity for us to do something we haven't done before, to hire someone new, then that's a hell yes for us. So that's our 12 points. They've got skin in the game, they're entrepreneurial, they have aligned values, they know what we do, they know the design process, they value that process, they value design, they've got great brand positioning, their deity of choice lines up with who we are, they're ready to start. The piece of work we're going to do is likely to lead to more work. They're £1 million plus turnover, and it gives us an opportunity to learn or to hire someone. We had a company recently approach us a little while ago now, and we had a great Zoom meeting with the founder and a couple of his team, and everything aligned. We were reading the same books on leadership and on design. We were reading the same work on brand. He'd been through our website, loved our work completely. He'd had a background in corporate, but he had a global charity brand, and he was working in many different sites around the world, and different sites were using different versions of the logo. The logo was hadn't been invested in the past. None of the brand had an investment, all using different fonts, all that kind of stuff. And they wanted a consolidated global brand identity. And we were talking, sizable budget, sizable time frame, really exciting project. And, just particularly me and the founder just really hit it off. And I thought, you know what, you are a hell yes client. And I was so excited about working for them. Anyway, we had a follow-up. So I then created a proposal for them, a really nice kind of brochure that we put through, and it sort of mapped out all the timeline, the sort of budgets, the scope of work, the deliverables, all that kind of stuff, along with case studies and various other things that we've done that helped us align with them. And then I had a follow-up meeting with one of their internal people who was actually going to be running the project day to day. And right at the outset of that meeting, probably about 3 weeks after the initial one with the founder, this guy said to me, the thing is, we want it done in 6 weeks and at a tenth of the budget. And he didn't really care about what the logo looked like. Wasn't invested in spending time working with their stakeholders, taking their staff and their people on that journey with them, so that they would end up with a brand that they all owned and felt aligned with. And so in one half an hour Zoom call, we went from hell yes to hell no. And one of the things we've learned is that we don't chase that kind of business. We did say, well, look, we can reduce the deliverables, but you need to double your budget. And they came back and said, well, look, we're going to go a different direction. You know what? I'm glad they did. That's not the kind of client we want to work with. It really caught me off guard, actually, that one, because I thought that we were so well, and actually having this kind of checklist, helps us to identify really early on who are the hell yes clients, and sometimes more importantly, who are the hell no clients. So why did we walk away from that? Because it costs us to do this work. We invest, Spread Creative and the team we created here, both the internal team and our freelancers that we work with, we invest ourselves completely and wholly. If a client gets us, they get all of us, the whole lot. We don't do, it's not 9 to 5. We'll go and explore their customers, their business, their industry. We'll learn about them. Was it one of those attributed to Einstein phrases of, in order to explain something simply, you must first understand it profoundly. So we seek to understand the client profoundly. We spend a lot of time thinking. We put a huge amount of emotion into our work to connect with the emotions of their customer. And so it costs us time and talent and emotion. And oftentimes it's draining. I mean, we love it because it's who we are, right? If it's not emotional, why are we doing it? But we choose to do that, and it costs us. And we don't throw our pearls to pigs. We don't take the best of us and give it to people who are not aligned with who we are. It's just too costly, and it leaves us feeling really empty. And I'd rather not do that business. I would rather be like Nick Knight and only work with a quarter of the people who come and speak to us than to have a company that's 4 times bigger, but working with people with values that are so unaligned to our own. And that idea of not throwing our pearls to pigs is the title of our next webinar, our next episode, which will be in about a month's time. So we'll go into more about in that webinar about how we engage the emotion, why we engage emotions, why emotion is a big part of brand, and if a client isn't looking at emotion, then why we would work with them. But we don't throw our pearls to pigs because it costs us too much to work with clients who really don't care about what we do, don't value it, don't resource it, don't pay for it, and are then not proud of it and don't use it. So that's just a little bit about that's about an hour's worth of how we go through grasping for us the power of hell yes, aligning all of our values with our customers' values. And oftentimes, we actually help our clients develop some of those values. That's a kind of fun thing to do as well, because as they work with us, they see new ways of working.